always try to encourage women, look for the man that comes to compliment you, but you can tell he don't do this all the time.
This
Look
is kind
for
of awkward guy.
yeah, just a little awkward. And then women wonder why a lot of these men can't emotionally connect. And they'll say, well, they're not connected to me emotionally. You know, all these men have all these emotional problems. Well, you wanted the smooth guy.
There are a lot of men who are just doing what they think a woman wants. If you're saying that you want a man that has experience, well, they got to go and get that experience. So you got to be clear about, I'm a different type of woman. I'd rather not be with a man that has had multiple sex partners before me, because I know that that can be endangering me. That can be a problem to our relationship and our marriage in the future.
The smooth guy has emotional problems. He might be connected to 25 women.
If you've learned other people sexually, you're going to think that you're going to compare. You're going to be comparing your husband. You're going to be comparing your wife with whoever you were with in the past.
I no longer listen to what women tell me. I just simply watch what they respond to.
It's important that women specifically pay attention to a man that's just always coming with game, always saying the right things, because there could be some kind of manipulation.
Sex does not begin in the bedroom. Sex begins in the communication between two people, even in how they hold their eyes to each other. That is where sex begins. A good man more than likely is not your type, especially if your type has been the bad dude this far in your life.
Right, so he may not be a smooth talker at first. He may not be the best at game or whatever it is that you want. He may not be that way, but if he cares about you, he will adapt himself to try to be that person for you as much as he can.
There's pressure for women to stay chaste, but there's pressure for men to have sex.
I've heard someone say, it was a woman, and she was saying that she had a lot of sexual partners at one point, and at one time, one of the persons that she slept with had an anger issue, and it translated into her life.
So now the woman is connected to the man, you know, through this energy, and now that's a problem. Because now she's basically supposed to be with her husband, she's supposed to be thinking about her husband, but yet her husband is not the person she's thinking about at that moment. A woman's a virgin, and she marries a man that's had 7 or 8 women. Well, he's still bonded to those women. I just think we live in a society where we accept men, you know, being in that state, but we don't necessarily accept women, you know, that have been in that state. A lot of people may or may not understand how soul ties work. And I think that's the key. You kind of have to understand how they work.
For millions of black women, many blessed with brains and beauty, finding the right man is proving elusive. But why?
Why do we have such low marital rates? And I'm not talking about black women marrying black men. I'm talking about men of all race wanting or desiring to marry a black woman.
Single, black, and female. Well, research shows more and more young women of color are having trouble finding that special someone to marry.
Why is it that black women appear to be undesirable when it comes to marriage?
All over, conversations are being had about why black women are not getting married. According to research, black American women are the least likely race of women in America to be married. This is a phenomenon. This is a problem. Marriage presents so many benefits, and black women, we are losing out. Why aren't black women getting married? I think I've come up with the answer, and I put it all together in my digital ebook. Marriage is for black women too. In this ebook, you will learn why I believe black women are not married, the benefits of marriage for black women, what God says about marriage, and ultimately what we can do as black women to not only get married, but to stay married. At the end of the book, I have discussion questions for you, your girlfriends, your small group, your church can look at and review so you can reflect on everything that you read. I believe that you're going to get a lot out of this book and maybe some answers that you did not know about why the black woman's marriage rate is so low. For black women out there that want to be married, have hope. It can happen. Get the ebook to see how you can get married and improve your chances. Please click the link in the description box to get your copy today.
Hi wives, hi future wives, this is Abigail. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I have a special guest. He is back. It is Jay from J2 Connect. on YouTube. I hope that you guys saw our previous conversation, what men are looking for when it comes to a wife. I'm telling you right now, that was such a good conversation. It was it opened up my mind to things that I honestly did not even think that men considered. And so if you haven't, go and check it out. So Jay is back, and before we get into that, get the free wife mindset guide. The link is below. You have to think like a wife to embody what a wife truly is. Let's get into it. How are you doing, Jay?
I'm great. I'm glad to be back.
Today, I want to talk about this topic about body count. This is something that I am seeing a lot online. This is a hot topic. And so I was thinking we need a man's perspective. Does body count matter when it comes to marriage or being, finding a wife, being married? Does it matter to men? When a man is thinking about getting married, does her body count actually truly matter?
This is exactly what I've been waiting for. This is exactly, I don't mean to sound like Cat Williams, but this is exactly what I've been waiting for.
As a Christian man, do you believe it matters? And I want you to be honest with me.
Tell the truth, shame the devil.
What do you think?
I definitely think they do. I think without a doubt, men care about it, and I think it's because of so many, different things. I think, we all kind of know the concept of soul ties. Soul ties has been kind of rammed in our head for the last 25 years. Where there's just a bond that happens in sex. So we know, okay, that there's something there. All right. And when a woman or really a man, has sex, with someone else, they're bonding themselves, to that other person. And so through that bond, now, they're creating a situation that even if the woman gets married, and let's say she's had, let's say, we'll give her 5 partners in her life. So she's had 5 partners in her life. Now she's getting married. Well, those other 5 partners are still out there and she's still bonded to them, despite the fact that she's married, she's still bonded. And, a lot of men, especially recently, have talked about where they can even see behaviors in the woman where they kind of can see the bonding. They can see the fact that the woman is not fully lined up with him and not fully lined up with the things that he has going on.
Say, hold up, wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Now, as soon as I say that, I'll be honest, I think the same thing goes for men as well.
Right.
I think that, a man that's been out there with all these women, he's bonded himself as well. So now when a woman is trying to, let's say if a woman's a virgin and she marries a man that's had 7 or 8 women, well, he's still bonded to those women. I just think we live in a society where we accept men, being in that state, but we don't necessarily accept women, that have been in that state.
A lie detector test determined you're telling the truth.
But I definitely think it's a big thing. I think a lot of men care about it, even the ones that act like they don't care about it. But marriage and dating are 2 totally different things. Marriage, like me and you both talk about, a wife and a girlfriend are 2 totally different women. And a lot of women that are walking in girlfriend energy, they think they have wife energy. They think this is going to go, down the path of where they're trying to go in their life. But they end up finding out that they're really just in girlfriend energy. They're never able to slide over into wife energy. And part of that, is the bonding, that happens, I believe, through sexual activity.
That's good. Wow. And I love that you hit on the fact that, a man having a lot of sex partners isn't good either. Because I think sometimes the conversation can be one-sided. And, I hear a lot of women say things like, there's a lot of these men out there, they want a traditional woman, but they're not a traditional man.
I see a lot of men complaining about this girl doesn't want to go 50-50. Oh, she wants me to pay for everything. But then I see a lot of those specific same group of men say things like they want a traditional woman.
And if you want a woman that wants to be traditional, you have to be a traditional man. And in the sense of, if you want a woman that's chaste or pure or innocent or hasn't had a lot of sexual activity with anyone else, then you need to be bringing that to the table. And there sometimes seems to be a double standard. Well, I love how you pointed that it's important for both. Purity is important for both because there's so many things that can happen in a marriage when you are married and when you are together. You know, that's why the Bible says two become one. And whatever is in that person, you know, whether it comes from a soul tie, whether it's a generational curse, whatever it may come from, to use Christianese terms, but whatever it's coming from, it's going to show up in that relationship.
Hello.
Show up in that marriage, and it's going to eventually come out in that person. And also, you might be feeling like, why am I acting like? See, marriage is a good, I would say, a soul tie. We always say it as a bad thing, but there's a soul tie that is good. There is a good soul tie, and that's marriage. That is the best soul tie. If you're going to have a soul tie, it should be in the covenant of marriage. But the problem is, so many people are out here marrying other people sexually, right? They're getting to know other people sexually, and that's the problem. Then they get married and they want a serious relationship, but they have all these issues. So once again, I'm glad that you said it's for both women and men. And honestly, I don't see a problem with men or women looking at someone's sexual history and saying that could be a concern for me.
Not my cup of tea.
You know, there are some people that can handle someone being married to someone who's had a very promiscuous lifestyle, and they've completely been delivered and they're not like that anymore. And that is possible. That is very, very possible. So if you are someone out there who has had many sexual partners before marriage, or you want to be married, but you've had all of that, deliverance is available and God can do anything. But it is important to divorce proof your marriage. It is important to make sure that, you know, you are doing your best in your singleness to not spread yourself all over the place, literally.
A nightmare. Literally a nightmare.
And then get married and think, oh, that's going to be the solution. Because a lot of people get married and think they have a lot of issues sexually, and they like, well, once I get married, everything will be fine. No, that stuff will show up. So go into just some of you mentioned about the emotional ties and the bonds. Go into that. Talk about that a little bit more. What do you think can show up in the emotional side of marriage when someone, or a woman specifically, since we're talking about women, has had too many sexual partners before marriage? What does it do to the marriage emotionally? What does it do to the husband, the wife, that connection, all of that stuff? Just talk about that a little bit more.
Well, I mean, like, as we start talking about soul ties, and a lot of people may or may not understand how soul ties work. And I think that's the key. You kind of have to understand how they work.
You're going to learn today.
And I know you've probably experienced this with your husband. So, you know, I'll give an example for those that have never truly recognized how soul ties work. So say, for instance, you know, one of the viewers out there watching, you know, she basically has, you know, sex with a man, or this is her husband, whichever, you know, because once you have sex, you're going to create a soul tie. So at that point, then what happens is, let's say, for instance, they're living together, and the wife or the girlfriend is out and they're at the grocery store, and the man's at home, and maybe he's watching football or basketball or the Olympics or whatever it is, right? And so he's thinking in the back of his mind, I would love to have some chocolate chip cookies. I would love to have some chocolate chip cookies. And then now the woman, while she's at the grocery store, she starts to think, I kind of want to buy some chocolate chip cookies. There's some here on sale. And so, you know, 15, 20 minutes later, she comes home. You know, maybe he helps her, you know, get the groceries out of the car. And then he looks in the bag. He's like, babe, you got some chocolate chip cookies? I was just thinking about some chocolate chip cookies. And she was like, you know, I kind of felt you were thinking about some chocolate chip cookies. So that's a soul tie. That's how soul ties work. And just like you said, they can be great in a marriage because it's almost like you have one mind. Remember, that's the whole thing, two become one.
Yeah.
So there's this one mind. And so what happens when, like I said, you have a soul tie and it's not good. So say now you're married, but one of the people you've been with, okay, in the past, and we'll, like I say, for one of the women, so let's say this woman has had 5 sex partners. And so now she's out there and she's at home or whatever, and all of a sudden, you know, she gets that sexual desire. We'll put it that way. And it starts to bubble up inside of her, right? and she doesn't really know where it's coming from. And it might be for a specific act or a specific thing. And many times the person will come to her mind, that energy. And right at that same time, the person, wherever they are in the world, they're thinking about her sexually. So maybe, they are single and they're sitting around, they're trying to figure out, what they want to do with their life or whatever. And they're thinking, man, I wonder what Abigail's doing. I haven't talked to Abigail in a minute. And me and her used to have fun. So as soon as they think that and they actually start to bring it to mind, now, whoop, all the way on the other side of the world, that soul tie is still there. And so now the woman is connected to the man, through this energy. And now that's a problem. Because now she's basically supposed to be with her husband. She's supposed to be thinking about her husband. But yet her husband is not the person she's thinking about at that moment. And so now if the man calls her, this man that was an old boyfriend, he calls her, all those feelings stir right back up. And it links into that man. And if she's going through something, because remember, we got an enemy out here. So the enemy knows when a woman is fighting with her husband. He knows when, she's having issues, with her children. He knows when, let's say, for instance, somebody lived in Atlanta, but now they live in Dallas. But now all of a sudden, the guy in Atlanta is in Dallas. See, the Holy Spirit knows all. I mean, the Holy Spirit and the devil actually know all of this. So the devil knows all this. And so now he's thinking, oh, yeah, I know how to, mess up this right here. And so he's basically putting that energy out, because you can have one person that's not saved. So this other person, they're not living that life. That's that old boyfriend. And the woman thinks she's moved on. She's married, had kids, all this other kind of stuff. And now, but she's going through some stuff and she's having problems. And now all of a sudden, the devil whispers into this old boyfriend, why don't you give that girl a call? But she married. Well, it don't matter. It don't matter. Give her a call. And so now, before you know it, the woman's on a date with a guy she ain't seen in a while. He's telling her all the things that she wants her husband to tell her, but the husband's busy. Bingo, bango. And now you got an issue. And see, like me and you talked about last time I was on, me and you talked a lot about Proverbs 7, and Proverbs 5. And in the original, we have to remember that the way Solomon saw his sons, he saw his sons as the average everyday guy, right? And a lot of us today, especially I think a lot of women, don't recognize that the average everyday guy is not smooth. The average everyday guy is not this really cool, get all the women type of guy.
Player from the Himalaya.
The average everyday guy might be 30 years old and has only had sex with one woman, maybe two. So now the average everyday guy is really who Solomon was talking about. But like we talked about, women can get the same information. So when you look at like Proverbs 5, it basically says, tells women, don't talk to men that are smooth. It literally says that his words are smoother than oil. And it says, run from him, flee from him. And a lot of women are not picking that up. But the bottom line is, God is basically saying, guys that are too good with their words, guys that know how to flatter you all the time, guys that, as soon as they talk, your emotions just flutter up. Leave those guys alone. Because see, those guys get you caught in the soul tie. And those guys, they sabotage your future. And that's why I say, when the Bible starts to talk about you're going to lose your life in Proverbs 5, Proverbs 6, and Proverbs 7, it's not saying you're going to literally die. It's going to say you're sabotaging the dreams and the hopes that you have, because all of those are tied into your life, the life that's coming, the life that you want. How can you be fully focused in on your husband when you got 5 men that's out there fantasizing about you, and now you're, going backwards, your energy is going backwards, and how can you go forward when you're always going back?
One of the things that you were saying about, having a soul tie, and it might as well be talking about soul ties. Should be the name of the episode. But
Yeah.
when you were talking about how it could even come into your thoughts, like someone could be, you're connected. It doesn't matter where you are, where that person is, you are connected. So you may feel like you've moved on and you're in a different relationship, but you are really connected. And you were saying how that person could be thinking about you. And now you're starting to feel, a certain way, like, okay, why am I feeling like this? Why am I feeling lustful? Why am I desiring sex right now? What is going on? And it could be because of that soul tie that hasn't been broken, because maybe that other person is thinking about you. And it's interesting because I've heard someone say that it was a woman, and she was saying that she had a lot of sexual partners at one point, and at one time one of the persons that she slept with had an anger issue, like a really bad anger rage issue, and it translated into her life. Even when the relationship was over, she carried this rage, like she was angry, and she never was that type of person. And she was thinking about it, and she said it was from that guy, because before him she wasn't angry. It does affect our emotions, it affects our way of life. And that's why it's so important that we save sex and we save that for marriage. That is the soul tie that we need. That is the soul tie that God has for us. If we're going to be connected and bonded with anyone, it is our husband, it is our wife. So I love how you said, you mentioned how connecting it is. How connecting it is. And a lot of times marriage isn't just a ceremony and the legal document, but a lot of cultures for the longest, sex is the consummation. That is when you're married. You are like officially married to a lot of different cultures and people is when you have sex with your husband or your wife, that very first time. And so think about it. If you've been having different sexual encounters and stuff before being married, then you have to divorce all of those people literally through deliverance and repentance. But you have to divorce all of those people that you have been married with.
It's over.
Literally. Because when you're sleeping with someone, you're tying yourself. So I just love how you mentioned that, like, that connection, that emotional connection is there. And it's just so interesting because I want to know, did you have any studies and research or anything? I looked up something, and there was this research from IFS, and it's like Institute of Family Studies. I actually get a lot of my research from there when it comes to marriage, family, all that kind of stuff. One of the things they were saying that when it comes to women specifically, basically the more sexual partners, if you have 10 or more sexual partners, you're more likely going to get a divorce. You're going to more likely get a divorce. So basically, the more sexual partners you have, the less satisfied, the less happy you'll be in your marriage, and more likely you will end up getting a divorce as a woman. And another reason why they say, it's why it's important to not spread yourself around before marriage is because, marriage is supposed to be a journey. Marriage is supposed to be a learning experience between you and your husband or your wife. And you're supposed to learn each other. And if you've learned other people sexually, you're going to think that you're going to compare. You're going to be comparing your husband. You're going to be comparing your wife with whoever you were with in the past. And that is a recipe for disaster. That is a recipe for disaster because first of all, it never should have happened in the first place, those encounters. But then now you're married and you can't understand why you can't keep thinking about Tyrone, or you can't stop thinking about Betty, or you can't stop thinking about Keisha, or you can't stop thinking about, Ronald, whoever. Like, you have these people in your mind and you're supposed to be focused on your husband or your wife. But instead, you're thinking about all these people and what they used to do and how they used to do this. And why doesn't my husband do that? Or why doesn't my wife do that? Or, and then that introduces comparison. And that's just a thief. That is a thief. Comparison is a joy killer. It is a thief. And to compare your husband or wife to someone else from the past is just absolutely it's not right. And it's going to show up in problems in your marriage, in your relationship. So can you talk about a little bit about maybe some of the research that you looked into when it comes to this, and also what, the topic of what I was talking about, comparison, how having so many sexual partners can be a problem?
Honestly, I mean, you hit on a lot of factors. Like, I can't tell you where some of my stuff comes up. You know, because I get so many nuggets from all over the place. I'm that type of person. I'm just like a information absorption type of person. But I ran into almost the same study that you did, except for the one I saw, it didn't say 10 partners, it was like 12. But I mean, it's not much difference, one or two. Because what they were saying is that once a person gets there at that 12 mark or 13, you know, it varies from person to person, what happens is they can no longer connect. And that's really where the problem is. You're losing connection. And when we really look at God, you know, I believe when we look at God, God generally resets things about every 7 years. So what we end up with is a situation where if a woman or a man has had sex with like 10 people or 12 people, you know, within this 7 year period, and that's really not hard, especially for women. That's not hard at all, you know, to have 10 partners in 7 years. Then now you're in this situation where it becomes very difficult for that woman to pull away and to attach herself, you know, to someone new. And that's important for the bond of just a relationship to work. Now, one of the things that you had kind of said earlier that I wanted to talk on to, which is really dealing with, I think, with men and the whole, because there's pressure for women to stay chaste. But there's pressure for men to have sex.
You're right. It's fact.
And I think we have to talk about that before we can go into, you know, the pair bonding any further, because a lot of men, they feel pressure because many women, especially if a woman has had sex before, she doesn't want to date a man with no experience. You know, because if a man is smooth in the bedroom, he didn't figure that out on you, boo. He figured that out on somebody else, and maybe 2 or 3 women. So for a man to be smooth, he has to have had practice. But if he's had practice, he's been with other women. And now he's linked to those other women. And those women are linked to him. So now you have this scenario where everybody's trying to figure out stuff. And one of the things that I noticed, and I'll talk about a little bit, I'm hoping this is not too much for your channel, is I talk a lot about, you know, a locked in sexual nature. And a lot of people, and I think this happens for both men and women, but I do think women lean into it just a little bit more, is they get locked into a certain sexual nature of a man. So I give you an example. As an intellectual, my main way of communicating with a woman in the very beginning is actually just to have a conversation. It's not really a lot of flirting or anything like that. It's a conversation. However, there are a lot of men that tend to flirt a lot, you know, compliment a lot. And those men, generally speaking, would have actually probably have had more sex, you know, in their younger years. And more than likely, that's generally the scenario that we see most women's lives to have played out in. So they ran into a guy, 16, 17, 18, maybe 13, you know, who knows, because, you know, people are so different. And the first guy was very smooth. He spoke well. He gave a lot of compliments, you know, different things like that. And that's how he buttered the woman up to get her to the point of sex. So now she's had that. She's had that with him. Maybe her second boyfriend was like that. And so now she's in a situation where another guy shows up, like a guy like me will show up, who's a little bit more intellectual. And when I'm talking to her, I'm not flirting. I'm not really, you know, giving her a lot of compliments. I'm actually having a real conversation. So now she's like, oh, you're weird. Oh, I don't want to talk to you. Because, see, sex does not begin in the bedroom. Sex begins in the communication between two people, even in how they hold their eyes to each other. Okay, so now we live in a situation where, like I say, women will be out here and they'll be like, well, all I run into is bad guys. And the reason why is because now their energy is so locked in to this guy who is more flirtatious. He is more, you know, in this energy. And like I say, it begins just when two people look at each other. It doesn't even begin like 2-3 weeks later when they're in the bedroom. And so now women are going through and they're like, well, I can't find a man. I can't find a man. I can't find good men. Well, it's because at the very beginning, and that's why, you know, Proverbs tries to tell women, don't ever talk to those people. Leave those people alone. because it literally traps your sexual nature into going after this one particular guy. It's almost as though you get a little bit of the devil in and then you can't get rid of him. And so now for the rest of your life, you're chasing the devil instead of chasing God. And so it can be real tricky, when it comes to that. And that's why I wanted us to start, have that so we could build off of, because I think women have to understand that. So with all these sexual partners, that they're having, what they're doing is they're locking themselves into that type of guy. Because it's just as you said, when you have sex with someone, all of your energy, all of that person becomes a part of you. And it's just like you were talking about, where the person had anger issues afterwards. That's the whole thing. It's two becoming one. Every single time. That's the whole point. It's two becoming one. And just like if you took flour and water and you put them together and you make this dough out of just flour and water, how difficult is it to separate them again? It's really hard to get that clean water out, or that quote unquote clean flour out. At this point, they're together. And you have to go through great lengths to get them separated. And see, people don't see it that way. They just see it as some, a quick motion. I'm just having fun. We're enjoying ourselves. But see, that's what the devil wants them to think. Because by him thinking, getting them to think that way, now he's fully lined himself up. I mean, he fully got them going down this path that, like the Bible says, it cost them their life. Because now, like I said, they run into a really great guy, and then they can't really, lock in with them. And then the men who have been trained sexually in one way, it's hard for them to lock into women that are trained another way. And so then we start to use the word chemistry. Oh, I don't have chemistry with him. I don't have chemistry with that person.
It was supposed to give, but it did not give what needed to be gave to the highest of giving.
But then, your people and my people or whatever, anybody can go out to YouTube and just look up, I married him, but he's not my type. And you see women saying that over and over again, because the good man more than likely is not your type, especially if your type has been the bad dude this far in your life, right? But see, men, and the reason why men can get over it quicker than women can is because men still seek out so much when it comes to beauty into the outside of a woman. And so it's easier for a man to deal with a woman who he doesn't quite have chemistry with, but he just thinks she's really cute. He'll put up with her a little bit more than he will, we don't have chemistry, so I'm moving on.
There's a scripture, and I think it's also in Proverbs, where it says her lips drip honey. Yeah. I don't remember what scripture that is.
That's Proverbs 5.
Is that what it was?
That's Proverbs 5. Her lips drip honey,
so,
and her words are smoother than oil. But it can go either way. It can go for men or women.
No, but when you were talking about how, a lot of women fall for the seduction of words.
Yes.
A man saying all the right things, a man being a smooth talker. And that came to my mind, that verse. And it was just so interesting because that's what it is. It's like honey. It's sweet. The words are sweet. There's a reason why women, we feel loved by, what a man says to us. Not just about what he does, but also what he's saying to us. You look so good. You look really pretty today. I love your hair. I mean, my husband, he loves my afro, and that's really the reason why I wear an afro. It's because my husband loves my afro. And I remember asking him, like, what kind of hairstyle do you like me to wear or whatever? And he's like, I like your afro. And he'll come around and he'll like mess with it and play with it and do stuff like this and, whatever. Mm-hmm. And the other day he was just like, I like your hair. You got your afro. It looks so nice. That lit up my day. I was so happy, like the whole day, just saying something like that. And it sounds sweet. It's nice. Mm-hmm. We like to hear sweet, nice words. Now, in marriage, of course, that's not bad. You know, your husband or your wife complimenting how you look or what you do, whatever, that's good. But when it comes to, you know, the dating process or whatever, I definitely think that women, specifically talking to women, I think women should be careful and cautious of a man that is just overdoing it with the compliments or overdoing it with the sweet talk, because that sweet talk can literally manipulate you into his bed. That sweet talk can literally, it manipulates you and have you thinking, because as you were talking about, sex doesn't just start when in the actual bedroom, but it's many steps, especially with women. There's many steps that lead up to it, right? And so it's just like the talking, that's one of the things. And if he's saying things to you and you're just thinking about it all day, you're thinking about it all day, you're thinking about it all day, it's always on your mind. And it's just like, you got to be kind of careful with that when you are dating someone. And because a lot of men, like you said, they have game. They know how to spit game. They know how to talk. There's even a community online called Pickup Artists, mostly for men. I don't know if that community is still big anymore, but I know that it used to be big in the 2010s and back in the day. But it just teaches men how to, there's videos of these men in different countries walking up to random women and just spitting game, talking to her, just saying things that a woman would like. And 9 times out of 10, it will win. It will work. And so they're teaching other men how to get game, because women do like a man that is going to compliment them or say nice things about them. And so I love how you brought it up, because sometimes we have to be careful about desiring those compliments all the time, or desiring and listening to those sweet words that drip like honey, and thinking about it and realizing that, okay, there has to be, sometimes a man can just be doing all of that talking and there's nothing going on in the character. You ain't bad, you ain't nothing. You mentioned before, when we talked before, about how important it is for a woman to consider a man's character. Well, if a man is just saying all of these sweet words, he's not going to give you even a chance to look at his character. That could be a potential red flag, because he's saying all this stuff to get you all riled up and, oh, wow, this is a nice guy and all this stuff. But you're not even going to look at his character, because you're so focused on the words. You're so focused on what he's saying. You're going to bypass the character. So it is important that women specifically pay attention to a man that's just always coming with game, always saying the right things, because there could be some kind of manipulation.
Just wanted to make sure while we're talking about this that a lot of women recognize that's how they end up with narcissistic behavior.
So as a therapist, I can spot a narcissist from a mile away. And a lot of y'all are sleeping with them, and they're your best friends, and they're your parent.
You know, when they start talking about narcissists, how do narcissists know? Well, narcissists know in how they're going to speak to you and then how you're going to react. You know, so I really want to make sure that women understand that, because most narcissists are not going to come up to you trying to be your friend first. They're going to come up to you trying to smooth it over first. And just like you said, most of the conversation is flirting, having fun. Oh, you look so beautiful. There's no real depth to the conversation. And that's why, like on my channel, I always encourage people to get on the phone, talk to people for long periods of time, because sooner or later, his compliments are going to run out. You know, sooner or later, he has to start talking about the things that you're interested in. And if you guys cannot be friends, if y'all cannot be friends outside of anything sexual, then I'm always encouraging women and men to leave those people alone. Okay, there has to be true friendship. If there's no true friendship, you'll never make it through marriage. Okay, but I did want to say, for a lot of women, they need to understand that a lot of men will become smoother the longer you're hanging out with them. And I don't think a lot of women understand that. They think that if I don't give the compliments up front, if the guy's not saying certain things up front, then he'll never say it or he'll never do it. And that's really not true. It depends upon the man. Every man is going to be so different. I've run into men that they're just not that dude. They don't give compliments. They don't do trips. They don't do gifts, blah, blah, blah.
It's definitely a no for me, dog.
But then, like with me, when I first meet a woman, I generally don't give any compliments. Well, I'll give a few compliments. I shouldn't say that. I will give a few compliments, but I don't over compliment. Like I say, at that point, I'm really more concerned about getting to know her as a person, right? And then once I do that and I get a little bit more comfortable, you know, figuring out who she is, that's when a lot of the smoother talk starts to come out. right? Because I do know that women attach to the smoother talk. I do know that they lock into the flirting and stuff like that. So I definitely want to go there, and I enjoy going there, to be honest. It's fun. But I want to make sure that their mind is right. And that for both of us, our minds are right, before I go any further. Get your mind right. Now, even with that, like what you were saying, I do want to talk to the point of once you're married, you do kind of want people to use those words in a very powerful way. I'll put it that way. I like to give people nuggets on the other side of marriage because I think that people can believe that everything people is telling them is actually bad. And no, it's not always bad. It's just kind of like you were saying, a man says things and then now he's in your head and you're thinking about him all day, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'll be honest, if I'm married to a woman or a woman is my fiance, that's exactly what I want. I want her thinking about me all day. So in the morning, I'm going to think about the words that I say. Through the day, if I'm going to, say something to her through text or through a call, I want to make sure that I am smoothing over that energy and that energy is ready to rock and roll, when we come together at the end of the day. So I want women to understand that just because a man comes in a little bit, thinking, with a little bit more conversation in the beginning, that does not necessarily mean he's going to be a boring man or a dull man or there's never going to be romance.
I'm bored.
It just means that is that man's style, right? And that's why I always encourage women to give the average guy 15 minutes. Talk to him, see if is he a decent guy, and then figure out what you're going to do, based off that.
When we were talking about smooth words, one more thing, it's almost like a salesman, a salesman, and that's why I say for women, you have to be, men are visual, women are visual too, but for the most part, to, a visual, sending a visual, being visual, men like beauty, right? They can think about it all day. You can send them a text or a picture or whatever. They're thinking about it all day. For women, it's more so about the words. It's more so about, saying certain things. Like I said, my husband's telling me that he liked my afro the other day that I was just so happy all day. So it's just two different types of ways to get the other going, but it's almost like a salesman and you have to kind of be careful. I was in the store the other day and, this guy, he was selling some type of phone insurance or whatever. And the first thing he said was, "Oh, I like your outfit." And I'm like, I know this ain't about outfits. I see your boots. I know what this is going on. I already know you're trying to sell me a product.
No, for real, don't play like that.
But before they sell you something, they're trying to ease their way in there. Kind of little sneaky, like, okay, let's compliment the way she looks, or let's talk about this or talk about that. Now, understandable for when you're trying to sell something, great. But the same thing when it comes to dating. There are men who are trying to sell things. They're trying to sell themselves to you through their words. And it's not a problem for a man to compliment you. I'm not saying that a man should not compliment a woman while they're dating or anything. I'm just saying be careful to too much complimenting, too many slick words, too many smooth words, to where it's like, okay, this guy, he is just saying so much all the time, but like you said, we're never getting to the character. Another thing you pointed out was a lot of women like men that have experience. And this is actually true. There was a study. Women basically said they like men or they prefer men who have more dating experience than them. That's what they like. They prefer men that have more dating experience. Now, in dating experience, you can assume, especially because of the culture that we're living in, that dating experience is probably also meaning sexual experiences too.
Yeah, boy.
So that is very true. Women and men, we're completely different. We have some similarities, but we're different. And one of the things is women's, even if they don't want to believe it, even if feminism is telling them no, we see men as leaders. We see men as more knowledgeable, and they're leaders, and they're strong, and they're masculine, and these are these people, right? And the reason why I say is because anytime you look up studies about what women prefer in men, or what women look for in a man that she likes, or what kind of person that man, it's always like somebody that's strong, somebody that can take charge, that's a leader, right? And in that sense, when it comes to the dating, they also want experience, because experience shows that you know what you're doing. Experience shows that you are a leader. For example, when it comes to, we have these political elections. I'm not going all into it, but a lot of things that people talk about when it comes to politics and different things is their experience. The candidate wants you to know that they have experience doing X, Y, Z. That's why they are the most qualified for the office, right? So experience matters to a lot of women. And when it comes to dating, unfortunately, when it comes to that, a lot of women do want a man that has had experience in dating and in sex. Now, I don't know how I feel about that all the time, because you can't sit here and say, but you don't want just the women to be told to be chaste, but then you want the men to be chaste too, but then you also want them to have experience in these areas. That's kind of like, it doesn't make sense all the time to a lot of men, because you're saying you want a man that is, traditional, or you want a man that is, not sexually active. But then you also do want, statistically, most women statistically want a man that has dating experience or have some experience in the bedroom, as you would, as you might say. So it kind of is a double-edged sword, I think, for some men, because they're like, okay, and another example of this is that there was this professor, he had a studies class on black men. And he was basically, the whole class was catered and designed around black men, getting to know black men, their struggles, all this stuff. This was a university class. The class had a lot of black women that attended at first. At first, it was a lot of black women. And one of the things that he said was, it was interesting to see some of the hostility that black women had about black men. For example, there was a man who was a virgin, and he was in the military. He was an upstanding guy by all measures. But one of the things he noticed was the hostility that a lot of black women in that class showed against him for being specifically a virgin was very interesting to him.
Black women were the majority of the class. A lot of it was very argumentative. A lot of it was very critical of black men. I mean, I remember there was one class very early on where this young man had come out the military. He's over 6'3". He's, well developed muscularly. He's almost done with his degree, and he was a virgin. He was a Christian. He was a virgin, and he mentioned that in class, and the entire class of women went off on him and were trying to emasculate him at every turn. And I actually had to stop them because they weren't about to stop themselves.
He was just like, this is interesting. Why is it so much hostility? Can you imagine if it was a room full of men, and basically they were hostile because the woman that was in that class was a virgin? That wouldn't be taken so well. So the whole point of that was they were talking about black women and black men dynamics and how there's a brokenness there. But I pointed that specifically out because there are a lot of men who are just doing what they think a woman wants. If you're saying that you want a man that has experience, well, they got to go and get that experience. So you got to be clear about, I'm a different type of woman. I'd rather not be with a man that has had multiple sex partners before me, because I know that can be endangering me. That can be a problem to our relationship and our marriage in the future, right? And so I think that sometimes when it comes to, like you were saying, we have to give some men the benefit of the doubt, because some of them are doing these things because they want to attract women, and they know that women like experience, right? Is his character okay? Does he seem to be integral? Is there something about him that can, like you said, that we don't need to just focus on chemistry so much, but is there something about this man that can attach you, that you can be interested in outside of maybe he doesn't have that much experience? You know what I mean? And also, when you're in a relationship with a man and also with a woman, that person will eventually adapt to you in a way.
Yeah, like I said,
so
you're
he
going
may
to
not
become
be
one over time.
right.
You're going to become one. Yeah.
Right. So he may not be a smooth talker at first. He may not be the best at game or whatever it is that you want. He may not be that way, but if he cares about you, he will adapt himself to try to be that person for you as much as he can.
I know that's right.
And so we forget about that as well, that there's some kind of like potential in that guy being who you desire him to be with your influence. That's why a woman's influence is so important, because a woman influencing a man in a positive direction can one more example. I know I'm blabbing on, but
Spellman's in Atlanta too. Second of all, I'm vacillating here trying to.
My husband, I love Urkels. Like, I used to have a crush on Steve Urkel. Family Matters was that thing for me. I enjoyed that whole thing. I was so mad at Laura. Like, she was just awful to me. But
I love Marla. That's my girl.
Marla was pretty too, though.
Oh yeah, she was over on Cosby Show first.
She was pretty too. When we were together, I just bought him a whole bunch of Sean John. Like, when I had a little job, part-time high school job, I just bought him a whole bunch of shirts. Eventually, he started buying his own Sean John shirts.
I mean, that's one thing we probably need to talk about in the future, the whole dating potential, because I think that's always a good one for women. But I will say this really quick, because I know we're starting to run out of time over here, but I will say this really quick is that I was watching this guy, and he said something that was absolutely phenomenal to me. And he was the first person I've seen to articulate it. And it was like a little Instagram video. And he said, and a lot of women got mad at him, because I think he had done it on a show, and a lot of women got mad at him. But he said, I no longer listen to what women tell me. I just simply watch what they respond to. And that is a very powerful statement. And I know that a lot of your viewers, because you mainly speak to women, will be upset by that. And the way I see it, and I've talked about it, is, and even in my own experience, when I was in middle school, and I'm always, teaching the whole thing about different personality types on my channel. And now I'm very outgoing. I'm over this, Christian group. I get all this stuff, that I have going on in my life. And most of the women that I've dated, they look at me and they're like, wow, you are very much an alpha male. I can feel it off of you. I can see it the way you move through your life. But when I was in middle school, I was still that type of person, but I was very much a romanticist. I romanticized a lot of things. And I still talk about this side of me because it still exists. Right? So during that time, because this is an inexperienced time for me, middle school. So I'm going out and I'm doing things for women, and I'm giving them things, and I'm buying them Valentines and stuff like that. And I'll admit, I never really had anyone to directly laugh at me like you see in the movies when this types of things happen. But I never got the response that I wanted. And I noticed that most of the guys like me in middle school that were doing that, we didn't get the response that we wanted.
Ew! Get off of me! Ugh, as if.
And then as we started to go up in high school, women would say, oh, we love nice guys. We want nice guys to do things for us. And we like this and we like that. But what we as young boys didn't hear was the invisible statements that all the other women knew, that we did not know when we were listening to these statements, which is, yes, I want the nice guy for the sexually attractive guy that I'm really into, that has the money, that has the smooth talking, that has this. I want that guy to be nice.
When a guy is a gentleman and is like nice and kind and gentlemanly, that's like, whoa, okay. Like, yes, please take my, yes, okay. That opens the door.
Yeah. I don't know if that's really true, though. I feel like you guys just say that, but sometimes y'all girls are like, he's a little too nice for me. And so I just feel like y'all just say that just to say it, really. I feel like y'all really...
I will expound.
I feel like y'all are really attracted to, like, player dudes.
What?
Over gentlemen.
And those two things generally don't go together, first of all, but then second of all, it's a wake-up call. And I think for a lot of men, that's the frustration that they have with women, is because they're trying to figure women out. They're trying to give them what they want, but then women react to something that's totally different. And to bring this back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, which is basically, the body count, situation, and the fact of, men being promiscuous. See, this creates quote unquote bad behavior. So how does this work for women? Well, it works in two ways. Like back in my dad's day, and even before my dad's day, because I remember him telling me some stories about it, it was not uncommon for a man to lose his virginity to a prostitute or to the older lady in the neighborhood that was a widow or something, you know, because he's trying to go ahead and get rid of the virginity. He doesn't want it hanging over his head anymore. It's
Get off of me!
not necessarily that he's trying to have this full romantic experience. He just wants to get it over with, right? And what you have now, and like even what you were talking about when what they're teaching men and all this other kind of stuff, what a lot of those teachers teach men is they're like, don't go after the woman that you want. So if the woman you want is a 8 or 9 or 10 out of 10, focus in on the 4s and 5s. Because those women like you pretty much anyway, because they ain't got nobody, so they probably hollering at you. So what they'll tell them is practice on them. Come up to them, tell them that they're beautiful. Tell them that they're awesome. Tell them that they're great. Tell them you want to be in a relationship. And basically, these teachers are teaching these men to lie, to be unauthentic. But what they're doing is through that process, they're basically creating men that will sleep with all these women, create all these emotional problems for all these 4, 5, and 6, level women. Okay. And then these men, what they're doing, they're practicing. They're practicing for the woman that they want. And men get better by practice.
We talking about practice. Not a game, not a game, not a game. We talking about practice.
I'm a huge Atlanta Falcons fan. I'm hoping they do well this year, right? But if I want to play for the Atlanta Falcons, when I was younger, definitely ain't gonna do it now. But in my younger days, if I wanted to play for the Atlanta Falcons, what would I have to do? I would have to practice every day. Everybody knows that you have to practice every day. So the person that's really good at whatever they do, it's not because they're better, it's because they're practicing. And see, that is really where the problem is. And then women wonder why a lot of these men can't emotionally connect. And they'll say, well, they're not connected to me emotionally. All these men have all these emotional problems. Well, you wanted the smooth guy. The smooth guy has emotional problems. He might be connected to 25 women. All these women are in his head. All these women he has shared a part of himself with. And all of the and that man now has been polluted by 25 women, just like you said. So now he might have anger issues, he might have emotional sensitivity, all this other types of stuff he has within him. And he's an emotional wreck. But he's smooth though. He talks well though. He knows how to compliment. And now he knows how to take you into bed, okay, and knock it out. But then you have the guy that doesn't have all of these things. And that's the very guy that you move past. Look for the man that comes to compliment you, but you can tell he don't do this all the time.
This is kind of awkward. Awkward guy.
Yeah, just a little awkward. You don't want him super awkward. You don't want him Steve Urkel awkward.
I like Urkel.
Got any cheese?
You like Urkel, but a lot of your people probably ain't gonna like. So it's like if a man comes up and he's like, yo, Abigail, that fro, girl, right there. And that lipstick, shoe, right there, girl. I'm telling you. Who you doing, girl? You just doing you. You doing you. See, when he all like that, nah, you gotta leave that dude alone. But if he comes up and he's like, hey, I really like, your outfit that you have on. I really like your glasses. That's really, nice. See, that's a whole different vibe.
Yeah.
A whole different vibe.
Completely.
And so that's the key. You're trying to find that guy that has enough courage in himself and enough strength in himself to be able to talk to a woman. But when he is so super smooth and it's easy and everything about him is flirting, and again, that's what the Bible talks about. We have to translate this stuff. It would say winking and the moving of fingers. That's how, Proverbs would say it. But now we know that men will do other things. But it's still the same thing. They're trying to get your energy. They're trying to move into that space stuff that women have seen on TV. And then, like I said, you're dealing with all these problems that's coming in from all that sexual energy. And then as a woman, every single time you're having sex with these guys, because these guys are going to have sex with you. And that's another issue in the Christian community, because women are like, well, these men, they all want to have sex. They all want to have sex. Well, the men you're talking to, yeah. So now the woman is upping her body count, and she's locking herself into crazy. All these crazy men that she's locking herself into. Because remember, if we're saying that this one guy is holding 25 women inside of him, and then now this woman is attaching herself to him, she's walking away with all those energies. It might be a fraction, but she's still walking away with all those energies. And she's polluting herself. And now we pray out to God to take these things away. Okay, and now we're doubling down on our problems. And don't, mess around and have a baby or, get something that won't go away. And now you got 2 and 3 times the problem. So it's like all these body counts that both sides are having, they end up causing damage. And people have to recognize, it's like, I understand the power of sex. Don't get me wrong. I understand the desire to have it, especially once, you've had it. I always equate it like a drug.
Stop it. Get some help.
I'm going to be honest. I see it like a drug. It's just everybody has their own flavor of the drug, whether it's crack, whether it's marijuana, whether it's alcohol, whether it's cocaine, whether it's heroin. We have our desire towards that drug. But the bottom line is, once that door is open, it's very few people that can close that door again. Very few. So I understand it. But women have to be, and men too, to me, have to be very cautious. Because it's not just dealing with the fact that the man is looking at you and he's saying, well, you've had 5 partners, so now I'm insecure. Because that's how a lot of women think. They think, oh, the man is insecure because of the body count. No, most men recognize it's easy for women to get sex. Let's be real. Women walk through Atlanta and they can get sex tonight if they want it. It might not be the guy that they want, but they can get it. But there's all these issues that come along with it.
I'm having a panic attack right now. I need to calm down because I'm having a panic attack.
And I think at the subconscious level, and we don't give the subconscious, to me, enough credit. Because a lot of the things that we struggle with is at the subconscious level. And at the subconscious level, I think there's something about men when we run into a woman that we consider pure. That we say, she's only been with me. She only understands my energy. She only understands the way I make love to her. She's not like you said, which I think is a huge thing. And I think that what you said right there was amazing, the whole thing about comparison. Because women, I think, a little bit more compare. Especially the sexual act and all this other kind of stuff. You even see actresses do it, which is one of the main reasons why, even as a person in media, I ain't gonna lie, I try to stay away from actresses. I try not to date them. Because when they're in a scene and they're kissing a man, that's still in their head. They could be 100% married, but that's still in their head. And so now women are, like I said, not saying all women, but a lot of women, they compare. Oh, well, yeah, when I was kissing Hugh Jackman, oh my gosh, he can really kiss.
Wait, what's that accent? What is that accent?
Well, that's my my female accent. That's my female impersonation. But, you have situations like that. But you don't have as many men, I think, comparing in that way. And comparison for men is almost something that immature men do. Like, once you get to a certain level, like I remember being in high school, and I'm not going to lie, any woman that had sex in high school, somebody knows. In fact, half of a guy's friends know how the woman was in bed. Because a man going to talk about it. But by the time you're 22, men ain't talking about that. They're really not. They might say maybe some things that led up, but they don't go into detail.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you something.
We don't.
But women, they'll be 30 years old, or even forget 30, because I've seen people 60 on Entertainment Tonight, and they be like, oh yeah, when I was with Robert Redford. Oh girl. And they talking about something happened 40 years ago, but they remember it like it was yesterday. And you just don't see men doing the same thing. And I think that's another issue for a lot of men, is that there are women that they don't know how to turn that off. Because if a woman compares a man in private or in public, it is direct disrespect to him.
You were talking about how those men that were more romantic had a more romantic type of interest, and like you were talking about yourself, like you were more into romance and you had this fantasy about what women want. I always see on certain videos that, when it comes to women talking about the type of man they want, there's so many men in the comments that say the statement is basically, so they want Tupac in a suit. Basically, they want Tupac, they want a bad boy, but they want him to be proper at the same time. And it's funny because when you were talking about how a lot of those men in high school, or just a lot of those men who cater to a woman so much and do all these things that they think women want, and they don't really get the desire that they want, they don't get that woman that they desire, because they're listening to what women are saying and not so much to what they're doing. And actions do speak louder than words. That's why that is a mantra. Actions speak louder than words. Some people say so many things, but they don't, that's why there's a lot of men that have become jaded with women, because they're like, you're saying all of this stuff. You want a Prince Charming, you want this, you want that. But then in reality, you're dating bad boys and you got all these baby daddies, or the only person that you give any type of attention to that's a man is someone that doesn't have your best interest at heart. And I probably will put it in this video, but there was a clip of Tupac back in the day. And he was basically saying how he used to be a nice guy. He used to be that same type of guy so he used to be the same type of guy that was like, I will, do whatever for a woman, and being romantic. He used to write poetry, I believe, back in the day. But he would, flowers, all that stuff that a woman say that they want. But he realized women never gave him any kind of play, didn't really like him on that level. They just friend zoned him, right?
I've seen guys speak to women with this much respect, and I deplore that. My mother is just told. I grew up. My mother raised me, so I have this much respect for women, and I fight often because of that, and it gives me a lot of friends. I mean, I get a lot of friends but I get a lot of friends because I have respect for women, ultra respect for women. But then, like I was liking this girl in Tam, and I'm extra nice, extra gentleman. I'm extra just like, oh, you're beautiful and you deserve the best. And she told me I was too nice. I couldn't believe it. It wouldn't work because I was too nice. That was the ultimate stab in the back. So I went through a week of just going, forget it, I'm just going to be like them. Because they seem to get the girls, and they call girls the B word, and they smack and beat, and they're getting girls, and I'm going, peace, and I think you're beautiful, and they're going, well, I like him because he's masculine. I'm masculine. I mean, and with the guys, I'm trying, and like yesterday he was cursing, and I was like, don't curse, and he got mad at me because I told him not to curse.
But once he became a bad boy, once he became a quote-unquote thug life, all of that stuff that he started doing once he became that famous Tupac rapper that we see now, women changed. Women were all over him. Women loved him. And so he realized that women really like a bad boy. They say they want some romantic Prince Charming, but in reality, they don't. And I won't say that's all women, but I do think that a lot of women do kind of toe that line and feel that way. And I just think if you're a woman, you need to just be clear about what it is that you want. And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of women that don't know what they want for real. And they themselves are being led down wrong because they're just looking at all these romantic movies and they think that's what they want. But in reality, they wonder why I'm not really attracted to those guys. So I like how you brought that up. Anything else you want to say about this topic, Jay, about soul ties, bonds, all of that stuff?
Well, I'll say one little quick thing on that. And like I said, you can mix this in if you want. But what I always tell all men is that all men need a tamed tiger inside of you. I don't necessarily think women like necessarily the bad boy, but I 100% agree with you when it comes to the whole Tupac thing and everything he said. But I also will say, I just encourage men, and every man, you got to have a tamed tiger. Because to your point, what women, I think, want to see is they want to see that little twitch in the back of your eyes when they look at you that's basically like, there's something there. Deep down in him, there's something there. There's something that's going, oh yeah, I see it. And it's going to do something to me.
All right, come here. Come sit back down. I'm not going to ask you again to sit back down or tell you again to sit back down.
And I think that's what women are looking for, at least for me. I mean, you can say how you feel about it, but that's what I've always felt. And, and I think every man needs to foster that. They need to foster that animal side of themselves, because I do think there is a part where all women just kind of reach out to a little bit of that. And they want to see the animalistic side of the man. And, because to me, bad boy is a relative term. You have some women that grew up in certain neighborhoods, they run into me and they'll be like, oh, you lame, you the good guy. And then you have other women that run in other circles, they'll hang out with me and they'll be like, oh, you a bad boy. Because it's about, like I say, that circle and how they see it. And that's why I think it exists within all men, but a lot of men have not really encouraged that energy. And I do think that men, because I think women instinctually, subconsciously look for it. And they're looking for just a drop of that animalistic. And I know, like I said, you mainly talk to women, but hopefully women can get something out of that, that concept. I'm good. I love hanging out on your channel. You are awesome. Your people are awesome. So.
All right. Well, thank you. J2 Connect on YouTube. J2 Connect. On YouTube, if you want to see more of his videos, more of his thoughts on relationships, dating, marriage, all of that stuff. J2 Connect. Thank you so much. Have a good day.